Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
I am DJ Ross. I am in Mountain View, California.
Each week on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. On this week's show, we're playing Star Trek Resurgence and Apico, and we're hitting the road with the new Genki Covert Dock Mini.
Oh, where are we going?
We are. Where did I go with it? I went to Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Oh. No, you're supposed to say where no man has gone before.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not picking up on your theme. Are we doing Star Trek things this week?
Oh, can we? Star Trek show.
I feel underprepared, I gotta tell you.
Oh, you didn't play any Star Trek games this week?
Did not play any Star Trek games this week, no.
Well, it's always next week.
I'm sorry. You gotta give me more than 30 seconds warning on these things.
Just go play a Star Trek game. Well, wait.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
I played one with you that one time.
That's true. Yeah. You're practically a veteran. That's fine.
We were on a spaceship together doing
did
things.
A little bridge crew. That was good.
Yeah. Yep.
I completely forgot about that already. We should revisit that for this year's Extra Life. Just make that a recurring thing. I'm
disappointed that you have forgotten about it, and yet it somehow still lingers on my mind.
Well, it just made such a big impression on you.
Yeah. So yeah.
Anyway,
all of that. I'll also mention that this is the time of year that we would be doing our E3 predictions. Things we want to see at E3 this year. DJ, what games and what new devices and fun things would you like to see happen at E3 this year?
It's great. I was stifling back a completely legitimate yawn as you were saying that. I was like, do we actually do E3 predictions? I don't know. I've been so down on E3
we did for a little while.
Forever, it feels like.
Yeah. I think, yeah, we did. Oh, well, I mean, I like to remind you that when you, I, and Paul first started doing this thing, we were like, what are our goals? What do we want to achieve with Video Game Hangover? And I was like, I want to go to E3. And then, yeah. A few years later, I was like, you couldn't pay me to go to E3. There's no way.
Yeah.
Nothing about that sounds like
window
fun.
Has closed.
Yeah. And now it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, but everybody seems okay with it.
Yeah.
You ask. I feel like I'm so post-hype at this point. I'm like, E3 is just another week.
I mean, I used to take time off from work to watch E3. It was a thing.
I know. That seems just unfathomable to me. I can't imagine.
I mean, it does to me now, too. I was like, how many vacation days did I waste watching trailers? So, yeah, I know. I was excited back in the day. And now certainly there are services that sort of provide the same rush that E3 used to provide. Everybody has their own version of a Nintendo Direct or an E3 press conference or something. And there's a ton of that stuff going on this year with the summer game jams and what's the other thing? Oh, Wholesome. The Wholesome Games folks have a Wholesome Direct this Saturday, actually, Saturday at noon Eastern time. That will be streaming, and it's all cute and fuzzy, cozy games. And that's very exciting. They do a nice job over there of kind of curating that fun stuff.
I had to say, I do get excited about new games, and I like, looking forward to stuff coming out, but I find the whole experience of just like sitting down and watching an hour of commercials essentially distasteful. I just I can't do it anymore. I skimmed through that Sony thing that was a couple weeks ago, and I was just like, oh yeah, new games. Let's just show me the highlights. What's relevant to me? Because I didn't want to sit through the rest of it. But that one apparently wasn't even one of the good ones. Everybody was kind of down on that one after it came out. Yeah. So it was just like, oh man, I actually went out of my way to track this one down, and people were just like, oh, really disappointing. So felt kind of betrayed.
I didn't watch that one. I can't speak to that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that one, people decide you can just skip that one. Unless you want to see people playing a Spider-Man 2 for 20 minutes.
Oh, I mean, I do. But, I mean, I'd rather be the person playing it, so I'll just wait.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I think I still get a rush out of that kind of stuff. I like Well, I fire up YouTube a couple times a week, and it's sort of like, here's some new movie trailers. And I'm like, cool, what new movies are coming out? And I will watch all the trailers.
Sure.
So I do still get excited about like commercials for things.
Really like a fun trailer, but
yeah,
just weren't any of that Sony thing.
So yeah, I consume what you will. It just there doesn't seem to be this kind of convenient one-stop shop for the new video game hype anymore. And yeah, maybe that's not such a bad thing.
Yeah. People can, adjust their hype expectations.
Sure.
Tell you what I am excited for, though. I realized at the end of July is Final Fantasy XIV Fan Festival. It's coming back. They're going to show off the new expansion. It's been a long time since we did this.
So you were not immune to hype. You don't find fan festivals distasteful.
Oh, no. Fan Festival is so fun. It's just, a celebration all weekend long. But that's 2 months from now. I'll come back to that.
Cool. Well,
what are your big E3 predictions?
I don't know. I mean, I would like a reason to turn on my PlayStation. That'd be nice. It does seem like there are not a lot of PS5 games.
Final Fantasy 16 is out next week or next month at some point in the near future.
I maintain I still don't have a lot of reasons to turn on my PlayStation.
I'm trying to throw you a bone here.
I thank you. I appreciate that. It could be the most perfect Star Trek cross Final Fantasy experience in the world. And I still would not be able to muster a ton of enthusim for that. I gotta be honest with you.
Man, good year for me, though.
Yeah, that'd be a hell of a day for you.
It's been an amazing year. Street Fighter 6? No.
Not my thing. Nope.
Man,
nope.
I wish I was playing Street Fighter 6. Like, too many Star Trek games for me to play.
We do have some nice Star Trek. You got me doing Star Trek. We do have some nice Street Fighter 6 chat happening in our Discord. We've got some folks looking for people to play with and whatnot. And the only way that I keep saying Star Trek.
It's a sign.
Street Fighter 6 came onto my radar is because apparently they're doing a crossover event with Chipotle.
Oh, perfect.
The burrito place.
Yeah. So this is what finally gets you into Street Fighter.
I'm like, wait a minute. I can have burritos and video games together?
What if you could redeem your fight money for a burrito bowl?
Extra guac.
Well, you're actually going to pay for that. No amount of fight money can get you the extra guacamole.
Unless guac mode has been activated.
Guac mode. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we do have a few folks on our Discord who are looking for folks to play with. And if you, dear listener, are one of the people who are looking for fun in a Street Fighter game, you should definitely join our Discord. Go to VGHangover.com for an invite.
Oh, I think you should try it. You might enjoy it. You probably wouldn't enjoy it. I don't know why I said that. I would just like to see you play somebody in Street Fighter 6.
I think the last time I played a fighting game, you and I played it together. And I believe it was, what's the Nintendo one?
Oh, Smash Brothers? We might have played that at PAX or something.
Correct. Yep.
They just got the new modern control scheme. Supposed to be real intuitive.
I did the survey for Street Fighter 6 to sort of figure out what kind of fighter I would be. And apparently I am the type of fighter who just lets the game autoplay.
Oh man, I'm so disappointed that they don't have the button mashy control scheme online. I think they reserve that for offline matches only.
Oh, interesting.
Man, that would be so fun. I would want to watch that.
That's like the sloppy, just hammer buttons and it does stuff for you.
Yeah, but it's supposed to do it in an intelligent way. I still haven't tried it myself, but I'm very curious about it. At some point, I would love to play Street Fighter 6 because I had a great time with the beta a few months ago. But man, there's so many games out at the moment. One of which is Zelda, and I'm not even playing that anymore. So I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what else I'm occupying my time with.
Oh, I found it. It's it recommended I use the dynamic control scheme.
Yeah, that's the one, the dynamic controls.
And GD Milkman in our Discord seems to be the resident Fighter 6 expert and hype man. And he says dynamic means that I push buttons and AI does the rest.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much what's supposed to happen.
Yep. And it recommended Dalsim,
oh, man, that's funny.
as my player of choice. It says it's the fighter that fits me best. And I don't know what any of that means, but there you go. That's my Street Fighter 6 hype in a nutshell.
Okay, well, one of these days, get you on board. I still think they should have a client that's available for free to everybody. They can just download it. And there's like only one character available. But you can still play against other people. So it's sort of like the, try before you buy experience.
Oh, like a friend pass or something like that.
Yeah. Well, that'd be even better. If it's like one of your friends, you just go online and play against them. Yeah. And then, maybe buy one or two characters a la carte. You don't have to drop, $60 on the full game if you don't think you're going to be all the way into it. But if you just want to pop online and play a couple rounds of Street Fighter every once in a while, that would be a great option, I think.
Does that model exist for a fighting game?
I don't know. There are a bunch of fighting games. Like I'm not sure. Well, I think Killer Instinct was maybe doing something like that for a while. But I always think of League of Legends, so they would have a rotating character roster. I mean, that game's like free to play all the time. But you would just, I think if you wanted to have a specific character available and unlocked at any time for you to play, you'd just have to buy them on the store. But I think that could really work with fighting games. I'm pretty sure I talked about this the last time we talked about Street Fighter 6, but...
Oh, I must have fallen asleep. I'm sorry.
I don't know why people are not, experimenting with that. Maybe it's like a balance thing. They don't want the online rankings to be filled with only Ken every week because he's the only character available.
Yeah, that makes sense.
People get sick of fighting that same character over and over. But I don't know. It's a mystery to me why Street Fighter hasn't done it. If there is another fighting game that's doing something like that, it's not one of the ones that I've dabbled in. So apologies.
I actually just remembered playing Multiversus, which I don't think is playable anymore. That went away. It's supposed to come back at some point. So it was meant to be a playtest, but yeah, that was free to play, and I think you could buy stuff, upgrades, and things like that. But the game itself, you could just download and play on your device of choice.
Mm-hmm. Who did you play in Multiverses?
I don't know. I think I was Shaggy from Scooby-Doo at one point. I wanted to be Rick from Rick and Morty, but I think you had to play him or pay to play as him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think I sort of vaguely recall a battle of Batman versus Shaggy, and it didn't seem very balanced.
Oh, man.
I don't know. Didn't know what I was doing. Thought it kind of looked cool. This is kind of an interesting collection of characters from across various Warner Brothers and DC properties. But yeah, it was fine.
I am just perplexed by that game. I'm like, are people excited about Scooby-Doo? I don't know. Like Batman, sure. Game of Thrones, yeah, maybe. But like Scooby-Doo, is that popular? Has that been popular in the last 40 years?
No. People had a lot of feelings about that Velma TV show, but
yeah,
the wrong kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So no, I don't know. I'm not sure. But when you're Warner Brothers, you kind of have to work with what you got.
Right.
Yeah. So they stopped making Multiverses, and now they're just messing with HBO Max.
Maybe they should have an HBO fighting game.
To not making another season of Westworld.
All my favorite characters from The Wire just fighting, I don't know.
Your favorite characters from 6 Feet Under?
No, I was going to say, God, what's his name? Matthew McConaughey from True Detective. I would play that.
There you go, yeah. You're going to have Season 1 True Detective fight Season 3 True Detective.
It'd be real unbalanced because everybody in Season 2 has machine guns.
Right. Or it's just a hallucination.
Yeah. That was Season 3, I think.
Okay. But, yeah. So, I don't know how we got here. I don't know how we get back from here. But yeah, I don't love fighting games. But
No.
to your point, I think as a social experience, I think there's probably value in having a free to play, try it out kind of element to it. When you were describing playing the Street Fighter 6 beta, that sounded really cool to me. I'm like, this is a neat sort of structure and what a proposition for staging a fighting game.
Like a little mock arcade thing they have going.
Yeah, and you had to sort of like, queue up for your turn to fight and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's kind of fun. Maybe I would check that out, but I'm certainly not going to spend $70 to check it out.
Sure. I mean, that's another thing they could do. Like, don't even sell people characters. Just let people download something so they can hang out in the arcade and watch other people play. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Maybe they're working
that's
on
Twitch,
that.
right? Twitch, that's what Twitch is for.
Sure. Yeah, on some level. But I was thinking, this way they could get right in there. Their friend doesn't have to be streaming it necessarily.
Yeah.
Man, I got all these ideas. Capcom could just hire me. I will, I don't know.
I know.
Just blow open their whole Street Fighter 6 model.
You better write this down and mail it to yourself, because if it shows up in Street Fighter 7, you're going to be very angry.
Oh. Why would I write it and send it to myself?
Well, that way you could say you had the idea 3 years ago or whatever and
Okay, now I'll just get on the phone with them.
talked about it. They seem like very reasonable people.
Yeah.
They'll take your call. Yeah.
Capcom's lawyers and I are like this. Anyway. Yeah, ended up talking about Street Fighter again. Weird.
No, what we didn't talk about, though, is Tears of the Kingdom.
That's true. Are we going to talk about it now?
No, probably not really.
No. Oh,
No.
Nothing left to talk about.
Nope.
I still
Nothing
haven't
at
played
all.
it again.
That's crazy. That is shocking.
It is crazy. I was like, man, I played the game a lot. I feel like I put in a full game's worth of time. And I did. I played it for like 35 hours the first 2 weeks. Maybe the first 1 week. That's gross. But
it was 10 days that you hit 35
It was 10.
hours.
Oh, yes, you're right. So a little over a week. That's a lot. That's like, what, 5 hours a day? No, I'm doing the math wrong. But anyway, I played a lot of that game already. And as we covered, I didn't do anything in it. So I'll get back to it eventually.
Yeah. My obsession with Tears of the Kingdom has gone so deep that I bought a portable dock for my Switch so that I could take it with me when I travel for work every week and plug it into TVs in hotel rooms.
Well, it's like, you can just, the Switch dock is already portable.
Yeah, but it feels kind of fragile and it's big. And I think, space is a premium and I like toys. And this thing exists that I could buy on the internet called the Genki Covert Dock Mini. And it's a cool, tiny little device that allows me to play my Switch through any television.
Okay. How much smaller is it?
It is essentially the size of the little brick that charges my cell phone.
Oh, that's very small.
So it's tiny. It is tinier than even I was expecting. I opened up the box for it, and the box was surprisingly big for a thing that's supposed to be like a little wall fob. And I took out all this packaging, and there was this teeny tiny little charging brick inside that, I mean, seriously, it looks like, I don't have an iPhone handy, but for my Android, it looks like the USB-C charging brick, which is, maybe 2 inches by 2 inches. It's tiny.
Just got a little like USB thing poking out of it.
Yeah. Well, so on one side, it has the prongs, obviously, that go into an electrical outlet. And they flip up. So it even makes the device smaller if you're trying to like stash it in a bag or something to travel with it. And on the other side, it's got a USB-C port and it's got an HDMI port. And that's it.
Oh, wow. So it plugs right into the wall.
Plugs directly into the wall. Yeah.
Wow. That makes me uncomfortable.
So, rather than sort of the traditional Switch dock, which is a device, which is a thing, like a plastic piece with a cable that plugs into the wall and you plug a USB-C into it and yada, yada. You plug this directly into the wall. You plug the HDMI into it and your USB-C into it. The other end goes to your TV. The other end of the USB-C goes to your Switch. You put your Switch on top of the little table that your hotel room TV is on, and magic happens. Well, in my case, you spend 15 minutes trying to figure out how to get to input on the hotel TV.
Yeah.
Because it's buried on the remote. They don't want you to do that, probably. But once you do, it's fantastic. And then I can just sit in my hotel bed and be a monster and eat a burrito and play and play Tears of the Kingdom all I want. And in this case, when I sort of tried it out last week, I was so excited I did it until about 3 a.m.
Oh, wow.
And I was regretful the next day. I had a lot of regrets. Yeah.
I think I saw you online. I was getting ready for bed and playing a little my Final Fantasy 1 or whatever it was. And I was like, oh, one friend online, Randy. Oh, something weird is going on.
In a different time zone. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So now I know what's going on. Night.
Yeah. So yeah, I had to be up for a meeting next morning at 7 a.m. So I got 4 hours of sleep that night. I mean, no regrets. It was fantastic. I did a lot of Zelda stuff. And I don't have time generally in my sort of like home life to do like 5 uninterrupted hours of video gaming.
That's a good point. Like, what else are you going to do?
So, I mean, a lot of things. I could be social. I could go to the gym. I could, I don't know, watch one of the 500 movies I would like to see. But nope, I played Tears of the Kingdom until I started hearing birds outside, and I was like, oh my God, is the sun coming up? This isn't good.
That's not good.
Yeah, and it was 3 a.m. But yeah, so I want to talk about this Covert Dock Mini. It's a cool little toy. It's made by Genki. It's $75-$80. You can get it from Amazon. It's a little steep.
I was like, is that how much that's supposed to cost?
Yeah, it kind of does just one job too. It really just does what a dock does for a Switch.
Okay.
But
the
it
Switch
doesn't take up
dock
a ton of
itself,
space.
like the default Nintendo dock, is fairly pricey, isn't it? It's like $100 or so.
I think it's $100 if you get a new one. Yeah.
Yeah. I was shocked because I was like, well, I'll just put one of these in every room in my apartment. Like, I don't even have a TV in every room, but who knows? And then I was like, oh, this is quite an investment if I wanted to actually do that.
They're a little spendy. So yeah, if you want a portable solution, I think it's a really cool toy. You get it from Amazon. There was a first run of these a couple of years ago when it first came out, and it was bricking people's Switches.
Oh.
And I was worried about that. So I have read, obviously, that Genki has addressed this, that you can't buy that version of the Covert dock anymore. There was something about the way that the USB-C port and that was tuned, and it was frying your Switch. And they fixed it. It doesn't do that anymore. So the new little dock comes with a proper 3.1 USB-C cable. You have to provide your own HDMI. It's not a problem to travel with one of those. I just roll it up and throw it in my bag. And everything works beautifully in a hotel TV or any TV, really. I have read as well that you can plug a Steam Deck into this thing if you're trying to get that to go to your television too.
Well, so it's basically just a USB to HDMI thing?
Well, there is whatever the magic that the Switch dock is doing. Because it's not a direct connection. You're not plugging a USB-C into your Switch and then plugging the USB-C into your TV. There's something that happens.
Oh, that sounds about right. I've never really taken a close look at the inside of the dock.
Because the HDMI has to be handling audio and video out, but there's something that USB-C is doing. Besides providing power, obviously. And then games look better in docked mode. There is some up resolution and better, better frame rate that does happen with some Switch games when you play them docked versus handheld.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just taking a look at my Switch dock. It's not even a USB thing sticking out of there. It's some other kind of connector.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, but that works with the Steam Deck too.
Correct, yeah. So whatever that magical conversion is, it also works for the way that the Steam Deck handles it.
You taking your Steam Deck places now?
I haven't. No, I've been playing Tears of the Kingdom. So, but it's nice to know that I have that option. I have a Steam Deck dock hooked up to my monitor in my office, and it's tiny. They did the right thing with Steam Deck. They understood the assignment. It is much smaller than a Switch dock. It is about 100 times smaller than the Steam Deck itself. So it's infinitely more portable. But this Genki Covert Dock Mini is just a cool, uber portable, tiny little thing that it's super easy to throw in my bag and take places with me and indulge in filthy video games.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, this thing again, Genki makes it, Genki. It's kind of cool. I think there's like the use case for it is pretty specific. Like this is clearly not a thing you need like banging around your house. But if like me, you're in a hotel a lot and are looking for ways to get the full screen Nintendo Switch or I guess Steam Deck experience, this is a pretty easy way to do it, and it doesn't take up a ton of space in your luggage.
Have you swapped it out with your regular dock at home, or this one just stays in your bag?
It just stays in my bag. I actually bought, when I bought the Genki dock on Amazon, I also found a little case that my Nintendo Switch Pro controller fits in perfectly. And there's a tiny little space between like the two bottom like wings of the Pro that I can fit the Genki dock into the case.
Nice.
So I get the case, and I get in the case I get my controller and my dock. And I can get the cables in there too, and it all fits. And like, this is my go bag for playing video games in hotels, and it feels cool. I mean, I can't get the Switch in there. I have to have that in its own separate thing. So,
I assume you have one of those like aluminum briefcases. You like flip open the locks, and there's like that sound of just like air releasing.
Yeah. Yes. And it's handcuffed to my wrist at all times. And if anybody tries to disconnect it, my arm blows up.
That's gonna make it hard to play your Switch.
But yeah, so I'm ready to go. Let's travel the world and play video games.
All right, well, sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm excited this week because I played a Star Trek game.
Cool.
Those are few and far between these days.
Yeah, I can't refute that. I'm not sure. Is this the one that is kind of like a Telltale game that you and I talked about briefly? Ah, very cool.
This is Star Trek Resurgence. It's, as far as I can tell, it's the first project out of this new studio formed by former Telltale employees called Dramatic Labs. And you're right, it is very much in the Telltale games style, where it is it's essentially an adventure game. It's very narrative focused. But you play as a few Starfleet officers in the course of what I guess works out to be one episode, or it's like not quite an episode because it seems like it's quite long. But they're just going around the starship doing Starfleet stuff, and along the way you talk with a lot of people, you solve kind of like rudimentary puzzles, and you make important dialogue choices that have impacts on how the story progresses. So it should be fairly familiar if you played something like Telltale, The Walking Dead, and what other Telltale games I like? I like The Wolf Among Us.
Wolf Among Us is great, yeah.
I mean, it's been quite a while since Telltale was a thing. I feel like the Walking Dead was super huge.
Yeah.
But then, did they ever end up making the Game of Thrones one? Did that get canceled?
I'm not sure about that. There was a Batman one. I remember the Batman one was pretty well regarded.
Yeah. I mean, for a while, they were just like making all sorts of stuff. They did that Borderlands one, I just remembered. That was supposed to be pretty good.
Yes, people like that. That was well received.
Yeah. So yeah, and surprise, surprise, there is now a Star Trek version of it, which I had to say is a great fit for this sort of format, or vice versa. Telltale is a great format for Star Trek. Because as much as I like, I've played my share of Star Trek games, and many of them have been pretty good. There's always been this weird balance of like, how do we make an interesting video game that is also sort of true to the like Star Trek experience?
Right.
And there's been a whole range of games that have attempted to do this to varying success. I played the one that was based on the Quake 3 engine. That was essentially just an arena shooter, and you would like shoot Borg with I think photon or shoulder mounted like photon torpedo launchers. It was like that one was actually super fun, but it's not quite what you imagine when you're like, oh yeah, I want to play a game that makes me feel like I'm in a Star Trek episode.
Yeah,
because as far as I know, there wasn't ever an episode where they just deathmatched against the Borg.
Clearly you missed an episode. Then you have to go back and watch that. Yeah,
I can't believe that's the one I missed.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of the hard part of that of the proposition of making a Star Trek game is then video games are inherently, and obviously there's detours from this that exist, but are inherently kind of action driven. And an episode of Star Trek is not necessarily. It tends to be a little more cerebral. It tends to be kind of talky sometimes. I've not seen a lot of Star Trek episodes, but I've seen enough to understand what the gist and the structure is. And I think maybe that's where some of the criticism for J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movies kind of came from, is they tend to be a little more bombastic, a little more action oriented.
Yes, I was going to say, so I don't even think that the most recent attempts at making Star Trek movies and like TV series have done a great job of understanding what Star Trek is about. And again, some of those have been more successful than others. Some of them have gotten closer to the mark, but in general, I feel like there is they're not quite recapturing sort of my favorite era of Star Trek, which was the 90s TV series, and to some extent the 90s movies. But this one, I feel like, is doing a pretty good job. I mean, they've got just the format works really well. I think it's a great starting point. It's not a first-person shooter. It's not, as much as I like Star Trek Online, it's not a sort of a combat-centric MMO.
It's not a driving game.
It's not a driving game. There have been some really good Star Trek flight simulators, but, that's another topic. It starts off and it just puts you into the shoes of one of the characters you play as. You get to control two characters in this game. One is the new first officer aboard the starship, the USS Resolute, who's just arriving for duty. And this introduction sequence has you talking to like some of the other crew members on your shuttle, which is taking you to the ship. And it's a very much a familiar Telltale experience. They kind of talk about your background, and you get a couple of on-screen responses that you get to choose from. So very familiar. And then the other character you play as is an enlisted, engineering crew member. So whereas the first character, being the first officer, you spend a lot of time on the bridge and making those big sort of command decisions and gathering, input and asking advice from all your bridge officers. The engineering crew member spends a lot more time sort of the lower decks doing maintenance work on like shuttlecrafts and sort of investigating anomalies that are like plaguing the ship and that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting sort of mix between these two characters. And I think that's cool too, because it lets you, recent Star Trek stuff has explored a little bit more of the sort of the not quite senior officer perspective. Like there's that whole new series around sort of the enlisted crew members, the lower ranking crew members anyway, who are more responsible for just the day-to-day operations of keeping the ship running.
That's the animated one, right?
Yeah.
Below decks or something like that. Lower decks.
Yeah, so it's cool to have these two perspectives in the same place, essentially, and like giving you insight of the same story that's playing out. Cool.
Does it have a episodic structure? That was kind of one of the things that I really liked, and was I think at times equally frustrated by the Walking Dead series, is that you would get to like a cliffhanger ending, credits would roll, and then it was like, ooh, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 6 months, maybe a year before the next episode comes out. Yeah. Does Star Trek give you kind of that, or Star Trek Resurgence give you kind of the excitement of a cliffhanger and the ability to like quickly pick up where you left off?
So it is not episodic. You get one huge, I guess, episode. It's like one continuous storyline, I suppose, but it's not really divided up into smaller pieces. It kind of is, but not as like discreetly as the Telltale games would have been. Occasionally there will be like a little chapter break and it'll throw a little chapter title up in the corner, which is fun because it looks like the TV series, but they don't quite leave off with big cliffhangers, at least not of the same magnitude that you would get in a Telltale game. Sometimes there will be, a scene will end somewhat suspensefully, but it will just immediately continue on to the next scene, often involving like a switch to the other character's perspective because they catch up with whatever they're doing. while you're controlling the other character. In fact, I found myself thinking, like, oh, maybe I would have liked this more if it was episodic. I mean, not that I'm not enjoying it, but it just feels like that would be another natural thing to do. Like, you could just have a few different storylines, a few different episodes involving this crew, and not have it all necessarily be this one continuous thing. Because I think this whole storyline in this package is like 9 or 10 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fairly substantial. I feel like that would be an entire season of one of those Telltale games, like 10 or 15 hours, I think.
Yeah.
We're spending maybe 2 or 3 hours per episode.
Well, that certainly made the Telltale games feel a little more consumable. You know what I mean? So sitting down to play a 10-hour video game is a big ask sometimes. And
sure,
you know, if the new episode of The Walking Dead or Star Trek in this case came out, and you know, it's going to be maybe some of those were on the longer side, 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes, but still, you know, on a weekend or some night in a hotel room, you could power through that, right? And have what felt like a semi-complete gaming experience, whereas 10 hours is a pretty big commitment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it works out to essentially playing an entire season at once, so it just depends on you how well you're able to like break it up so you don't get bored of it or whatever.
Right.
But I have to say, it has been super exciting getting into this. Once you get off the shuttlecraft and end up on the space station where you're going to go, meet your captain and get onto the ship and everything. And it just turns into like a bunch of Starfleet officers walking around and just like hanging out and looking at view screens and everything. I just thought, wow, this feels like, this is not J.J. Abrams' Trek where everybody is just running around and yelling at people. And it's not, it doesn't even feel like the newer Star Trek series. It is very much like tonally in that 90s era Trek, which is very exciting.
Cool. That's what you want, right?
That's what I want specifically.
Yeah.
So I feel like, the developers had something similar in mind. So very exciting to see that. In fact, it feels a lot to me just getting around the starbase initially. It really felt like sort of the opening hours of Mass Effect, which up until this point had probably been the closest thing to this like Star Trek Telltale experience, because that game had so much there's so many conversations in that, and you could to some extent choose the outcomes of each one because there's so many dialogue trees and everything. Like, it wasn't a one-to-one match with sort of the Telltale experience, but did have a lot of overlap.
A lot of drama too. That's my limited association and understanding of the Mass Effect series. Is there's a lot of character interaction leading to story beats and things happening and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Although that game just turned into like a third-person shooter quite frequently.
Yeah.
So if you take most of that out, and it's more about just like a little bit of like third-person navigation and talking to other characters, I was like, oh yeah, this is a bit like Mass Effect if you just removed a lot of the combat and like RPG elements.
But I was joking earlier about it not being a driving game. I was thinking of the time that I played Mass Effect, and
you get to drive the little the buggy across the planet.
Yes, like a lot. Like, for the most part, I was driving the buggy and arguing with people and getting out occasionally and fighting and shooting, and then getting back in the buggy and driving some more.
Yeah.
It was quite a big part of whatever that Mass Effect game was.
Oh, that was the new one. I forgot you played that one. I still haven't played that one. I was thinking of the buggy from Mass Effect 1, which was like just a comedic experience. The way physics worked in that game, it was incredible.
But no buggy in Star Trek Resurgence.
So far, there's been no buggy.
Excellent.
Although, I have popped in the menu a few times, like the options menu, and there are like a surprising number of different control layouts, which I haven't fully explored, with labels like, exploration and I don't know what the other ones are, honestly. But some of them were like, using the transporter or using the tricorder. So it seems like there's potential for just a lot of things to happen. I remember reading something about there being stealth segments. That was sort of like a back-in-the-box bullet point. I was like, oh, okay, we might as well just do this, but whatever. Up until this point, it's been a lot of just like conversations on the bridge There was a sort of mission briefing around the conference table, which was exciting. You do end up doing a lot of like sort of menial work when you're playing as the engineer, which I have to say I don't love because it's been a lot of just incredibly simple sort of like gesture-based mini games. You think of something like Heavy Rain, all those games where you're sort of doing a quick time event. It's like rotate the right stick to open the lever on this hatch or align these particles or whatever. Where it's like not especially interesting or engaging, but I guess it's just that's what you do as an engineer on a starship. So it's like whatever, it's fine. It just feels a little silly after like the fifth or sixth time you have to rotate the analog stick.
How many hatches are in this game?
There's a surprising number of hatches. I think it's hilarious, actually, because every time you go to a different place on the ship, it's like a different interface. Like you pull a panel off another piece of machinery. It's like, oh, this one, like, why didn't they build it just like the other one? Because I already know how to do that other one. But it's like, whatever. I don't know how a starship works. It seems complicated. They do manage to squeeze in a lot of, like, stuff that feels really authentic this series, though. Like, at some point, you're investigating something that's happened to the shuttlecraft, and your guy pulls out a tricorder. And I was like, oh my god, I don't think I've ever used a tricorder in a Star Trek game before. Aside from, in Star Trek Online, there would be like, press F to scan this with your tricorder. And like, that's not very interesting. But in this, you actually hold the thing out. The tricorder is like the little handheld device that everybody carries on the show. And you like hold it in front of you and you can switch between the different scan modes and it shows you, potential anomalies in the shuttlecraft engines. And I was like, oh man, this is great. I've been waiting years to use one of these things. So this specifically is very exciting. This is so much better than just turning the crank on that, that hatch a few minutes ago.
Sure. Or pressing F to scan.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's super fun. It makes up a little bit for all the other weird little mini games that the engineer has to do. I'm hoping there will be more of that. I hope I get to operate the transporter at some point. That'll be exciting. But it's been a very interesting experience of, going through sort of the narrative sections of the game as the first officer and doing a little diplomacy and going back to the engineer's perspective, which as much as I like sort of the lower decks energy, I wish it was a little more like tricorder scanning and less of the, rotating the analog sticks. Because it does feel at some points that there are things you do in this game that you are doing just because it seems like something you would do in a video game. You know what I mean? So a lot of those little quick-timey event kind of things. What else do you have to do? Oh, so it turns out that the bridge officer actually is from this rare race of aliens who are dependent on some kind of like mineral infusion that they have to have at regular intervals in order to not die. And it's like, okay, this definitely doesn't sound like it's going to come back at a critical moment and you'd be like, oh no, I don't have any of my special minerals to, inhale or whatever. And it's just going to be a cheesy sort of way to, punch up the drama of whenever that ends up happening. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, okay, fine. Just like do whatever you need to do to have it be a video game. But I'm really enjoying sort of the narrative focus of everything. In fact, I've been wondering, like, would it be possible to make a game without all these little mini game aspects? Because I just don't think that's that interesting. I'm really here for just the talking heads around the table and negotiating with aliens or whatever else they end up doing. Like I said, a lot of the stuff, well, there are a lot of things in the game currently that feel like you just have to be reminded that you're playing a video game, so now it's time to, shoot some stuff with a phaser. But I think they could have totally just, gone the full narrative route, like the full Telltale route. Because I feel like I don't remember as many little, like mini interactions in those games as there are in Star Trek Resurgence.
Yeah, I mean, there was an element of that occasionally in the game, but there were even parts of the game where you were, controlling a vehicle or shooting a gun and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't have fond memories of those sections.
Yeah, well, because they didn't play the way that you would expect your video game training to teach you that they did. It wasn't suddenly didn't turn it into a first-person shooter with all the controls in the right places. So it was still very much kind of Telltale's approach to it. So yeah, it does sound a little unfortunate that they had to like pivot to a different character to make it feel video gamey occasionally. But it does sound like someone was reading your diary and shares a love for 90s Star Trek in the same way that you do. So that's cool that this is there and exists and has been satisfying.
Yeah. So I don't know how proportionally that'll work out if it just ends up being more and more little opening hatches and calibrating particles and things like that as the game progresses. I hope it's more stuff that's closer to the tricorder scanning and that sort of stuff, because that was actually really interesting. But I'm looking forward to getting into the rest of it. I've only played this for a few hours up to this point, but so far, very, very promising start.
Cool. Can I ask any familiar faces? Any Star Trek past or present Star Trek characters or crew that have popped up?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I just want to say I'm actually thrilled that it's not just, here's the Enterprise crew again. I like that you're not on the Enterprise, because I feel like that is something that sort of the newer Trek properties, like the movies and some of the series, just have a very difficult time letting go of. Like, not everything has to be Captain Kirk or Captain Picard, for that matter. Mm-hmm. Not every ship has to be the Enterprise. So I love that it's a new crew and a new ship just taking place around the same time as the old TV series. But nevertheless, we have this Ambassador Spock shows up, which is like fine. They just managed to shoehorn Spock into everything, but like, whatever. And like Commander Riker from the Next Generation shows up at some point. I haven't run into him yet, but that's also fine because he hasn't been brought back nearly as many times as some of the other characters who I could name. So they're using these callbacks very sparingly. Like, for the most part, it's an entirely original sort of Star Trek episode, which is exciting.
Cool. Which is, probably what you would want.
Yeah. Like, I've seen all the shows with Kirk and Spock and Picard and everything in them, and those are great. Those are a lot of fun. I like those characters, but...
And they're still making them.
yeah, they can't stop making them.
Yeah, we're not lacking for any Picard at this point, right?
I'm so relieved that series has ended. I'm just like, finally, we can move on, or we can attempt to move on. I'm not optimistic about whatever they're going to follow it up with, but man, I'm trying so hard to just restrain myself from just awful Star Trek opinions on this episode, but whatever. What was I going to say? Oh, the voice actor playing Spock. I mean, it's not Leonard Nimoy because he's unfortunately passed on.
What? That's ridiculous.
I was like, I don't know what they're going to do. Like, are they going to have some AI voice playing him? Like, that's dubious. But no, it's like an actual guy. He does maybe the best voice performance I've heard in a video game. Like, as far as sort of a sound-alike performance. Yeah. It's unreal. Wow. Like, watching the trailer, he's in one of the trailers for the game, and you can actually watch that scene with them all sitting around the conference table. He sounds exactly like Leonard Nimoy, and it's not even like, it's like a very specific era of Leonard Nimoy. It's like older Leonard Nimoy, where he's got, some sort of like distinctive speech characteristics just because of his age. And the guy doing the voice, I don't have his name in front of me. He sounds exactly like him. It's unreal. So I don't know what the story is, if he's just like a pro Spock impersonator at conventions or whatever that they source for this. I hope that's the deal, because that would be super exciting for him. Oh, they just found, a ringer voice actor. I've looked up his name before. I've not heard of him previously, but just does an incredible job as Spock. And then they actually have Jonathan Frakes playing Commander Riker. So very, very much looking forward to him showing up.
Oh, that's a cool get. There we go.
But yeah, so far those are the biggest sort of like tiebacks to the original, or the previous Star Trek series, which I feel like is a reasonable amount.
Cool. The Ambassador Spock voice actor is Peter Michael.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right.
Who had previously took on the role in the Star Trek Into Darkness Honest trailer almost 10 years ago. The reps noted that Dramatic Labs heard dozens of auditions for the Spock role, and Michael outshined the competition by leaps and bounds.
Interesting. Well, he does an incredible job, because watching that trailer, I could have sworn it was They just went into the archive and pulled all this Leonard Nimoy audio and stitched it back together.
It's together really like a ransom letter. Yeah.
yeah. But no, he does an incredible job. It's like it sounds exactly like Leonard Nimoy. It sounds like Spock. It's really impressive.
Cool. That's great.
So really exciting that this exists. I hope other Star Trek fans are getting into this as well, because it's not the most publicized thing. I imagine like Star Trek fans, they just sort of have a sixth sense for this sort of thing, so they're probably aware of it. I hope everybody is playing it and having a good time with it, though. Because I feel like there's a lot of sentiment that people want sort of a return to the 90s era of Star Trek. I think that's a lot of people's favorite series. And this seems to be delivering that, so that is very cool.
Cool. Man, yeah, I had talked forever ago about, the one brand that could make an awesome X-Files episode or X-Files video game would be Telltale.
Yeah.
And then Telltale went away, and I'm like, oh, well, I guess that X-Files thing will never happen. But the fact that it sounds like some of those developers have rebranded themselves and recoalesced as, what is it? Distinctive Labs?
Dramatic Labs.
Dramatic Labs. Maybe gives me hope that that X-Files video game might see the light of day someday.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I hope this does really well for them. It is, not to throw shade on this game or anything. It's very evident this is not, Telltale at its height with, their, I don't even know what their budgets look like, but, it's got some rough edges, Star Trek Resurgence. But for the most part, it's doing what they set out to do. And I can overlook all of that stuff. So, very cool. I really hope that this continues either with more Star Trek stuff, or maybe eventually they'll do an Enterprise, or not Enterprise, an X-Files thing. Who knows what is next on their list.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of licensed stuff in the Telltale catalog. I mean, Telltale never made a Star Trek game, so there's no reason to think that they would just rehash the stuff they've done before. But it's cool that the legacy kind of continues on.
Yeah, it's surprising that, it's really, Star Trek is in a pretty good place these days. Did not expect to have quite this sort of revival that is going on right now.
This buffet of options.
Yeah, well, I was going to say Resurgence, but that is, maybe appropriately what they've just used for this game already. It really felt like, the J.J. Abrams movies were sort of the last gasp of trying to revive Star Trek, and I wasn't feeling extremely confident about how that was doing. But now we've got some pretty decent TV series, and we've got this game. It's exciting.
Yeah. And the movie thing does seem to be kind of on hold with future unknown at this point.
That's fine. They can take a break from those things and figure out what's going on.
I don't have anything invested in here, certainly not to the degree that you do, but I enjoy those J.J. Abrams movies. I think they're fun.
Sure.
But I don't have, a dozen years of history of going back in Star Trek and being able to be sort of precious or defensive about these things. So, it's I think they're a nice little fun piece of entertainment. But yeah, I may be alone in that.
No, I mean, plenty of people like those movies. They're just, I like some aspects of them, but they're not exactly calling back to the original series like this game does.
They're very much their own thing.
Somebody else's take on Star Trek.
I'll offer that even in my own house, I'm the only one with that opinion because Sarah thinks they're blasphemy. So I think it's a thing. Like her and her dad have a history of having watched a ton of Star Trek episodes together as a kid. So she tends to be also a little precious about it. And I took her to see one of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies, and we walked out, and I'm like, that was fun. And she's like, that was awful. and I think the word that it came down to was blasphemy. It's like, this is like a movie made by somebody who's never seen an episode of Star Trek before.
Okay. I think that's actually the case with those movies.
So, not only am I alone on the podcast, I'm alone in this house, and But cool.
Yeah,
good. I'm glad this is out there. This sounds like a fun thing. I would be curious to check it out.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And like I said, I've been doing my best to restrain myself from just dumping all my incredibly nitpicky Star Trek opinions all over this episode. But if I can point out one thing, if I can just complain about one thing for a second,
I'll allow it.
The uniforms. What's going on with the uniforms, guys? They're clearly like going for, the sort of like First Contact, later Deep Space Nine style of uniforms. And for the most part, they look good. But like the colors are like way too dark. The department colors on the collars and everything are just straight up the wrong colors. I think that's worth another look. And if you need a uniform consultant or just some like 90s Star Trek series style consultant, you can call me. I'm available. It's like somebody, you told them like, oh yeah, Star Trek characters or Starfleet officers wear red and yellow and blue. Any variation of red and yellow and blue will do. Just pick any one you want. And then they just went with it.
That's interesting.
But you spend the entire game staring at people wearing these uniforms that are just slightly the wrong color, and it's very aggravating. Okay, that's my one Star Trek Resurgence take.
Did you check your TV settings? You're sure it's not your TV, right?
Oh, it's not my TV. No, I just trust me on this.
Do they have the little screen at the beginning that says adjust your darkness until you can barely see the logo?
Adjust your color settings until the uniforms are the right color.
Until the uniforms are correct, yeah.
Yeah.
And squint your eyes and tilt your head. And does it look like Spock? It looks like Spock, doesn't it?
Yeah. Turn up your brightness until Spock is visible.
Good times. You really should bring that up at the next Star Trek convention. Really, I would stand up and grab the mic from the host and really just grill William Shatner on that point, because I'm sure he would have an opinion.
I'm not going to a Star Trek convention. I don't want to hang out with Star Trek fans.
No.
All
right, we'll save that for another episode. I have a lot to unpack on that.
All
right. Cool. Yeah, this it sounds like fun. I think more than anything for me, I think it's cool what this represents. That somebody is trying to sort of relive the glory days of Star Trek, but two, the glory days of making Telltale games again. So hopefully that sells well enough to warrant further development.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm excited to see what comes next. I don't know if it's like another episode with this crew or even another Star Trek game for that matter. But whatever else they've got up their sleeves, I think would be exciting to see.
Cool. The game that I've been playing this week is very different. Is kind of a cozy. How is this described? The game is called Apico, and it is a cozy beekeeping life sim. One of those,
as opposed to one of those like serious and gritty beekeeping life sims.
Yeah. A game like that would almost have to be cozy, right? I think that's sort of implied. I think what they're going for here is
beekeeping like a cozy profession, do you think?
I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I occasionally get sucked into like beekeeping YouTube and beekeeping Instagram. I follow a few people on Instagram that are beekeepers and post videos and stuff like that about their lives and their jobs.
What?
Yeah. I'll tell a further story here. There was when I lived in New York, the lady who cut my hair, her partner was a beekeeper. And I was like, I have questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have questions.
It's just a really interesting hobby. I mean, there are people who do it for a living. He did it for a living. He was a professional beekeeper. So it's a really interesting thing. Obviously, from an animal behavior perspective, they're kind of interesting critters. From a importance to the kind of like our food in the world, and hive collapse and things like that. I think they play a very important role in the way that things get pollinated and thus allowing us to eat wholesome, healthy foods. So yeah, bees are super important, and I think maybe easily overlooked.
But this sounds like, it's not like your personal hobby, but you mentioned going down the beekeeping rabbit hole, I guess, like multiple times, it sounds like. So it sounds like it's more of just a passing interest.
It's an interest. Yeah. No, not enough to, like, in the sense that like, I have to do this. I'm going to be a beekeeper. I'm going to buy
Well, yeah, sure.
a box and fill my patio full of bees.
You
I'm
should
not
definitely
interested
have somebody
in it.
supervise.
I need an adult. I'm not interested in it enough to want to do it myself.
Sure.
And I take a very similar approach, and I think I've talked about this on the show too, about bird watching, and that like it's a very niche hobby. I think there's like something very specific about the temperament of somebody who wants to like go to a park and hope a bird shows up that's worth seeing, and that's it. Like that's the experience. I saw a bird.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a rare bird or it's a common bird, but it's an interesting bird, and here's why. Like I don't know that I have a hobby that's quite like that. So bird hobbyists and bee hobbyists I think have like a shared appreciation for some minute thing that I don't quite see.
Hmm.
And I think that's interesting. Like, I like video games and I like horror movies, and those are pretty common interests, pop culture wise. But I don't think I have a fascination or a hobby or a nerddom that quite verges on beekeeping. So yeah, it's interesting to me that like
really.
in the same way that there are people out there who are like into stamp collecting and stuff. It's just a very, very specific niche thing that is that's cool. There's certainly a lot of like knowledge that has to happen there. You can't just sort of like willy-nilly decide you're a beekeeper someday.
Right.
Because I guess it could be dangerous, right? There was a video I saw on YouTube, and it's been a while now since I saw it, about a beekeeper who had encountered a bad hive, that the queen had died and the rest of the hive had gone rogue, and they were just attacking people. And it was in a park somewhere, and the hive had to be destroyed. And it was this sad thing, this very sort of like, there's these are important animals. These are important insects. And this is not a thing that should be done lightly. And there was a lot of like heaviness and gravity to it about sort of dismantling and killing this hive. And I was like, oh, it's so much sadder than I thought it would ever be. I generally think of bees as a nuisance. Get out of my yard. I'm trying to enjoy a summer afternoon. But I don't know. It just gave me kind of a deeper and much more significant appreciation for what these people do and what bees do. So when I heard there was a video game that sort of approached the life of a beekeeper, and that your character in it came from a family of beekeepers and lived on a series of islands where beekeeping was a super important thing, and that it somehow sort of dovetailed with like a Stardew Valley kind of approach to video game making. And that it's kind of cozy with a day and night cycle, and there's little villagers you meet and shops you go to, and you're kind of developing an island. And, the beekeeping has kind of been a little overlooked as the time has gone by, and you're sort of reclaiming your family's interest in this and building a little more structure into it. And you can do kind of cool stuff with like cross pollinations. There's an element of like growing flowers and stuff like that in the game too. And if you plant them near hives, the bees will cross-pollinate them, and you can get interesting new sort of generations of flowers. There's somebody on the island who is a butterfly keeper and researcher. So not only are you learning a bit about bees and like the structure of a beehive and how to keep a hive, you're also learning a bit about butterflies and how bees and butterflies kind of work together in a lot of ways as pollinators. And I imagine probably if you're listening to me talk about this right now, which I know you are, DJ, to our listeners too, maybe it sounds a little dry. Maybe this sounds boring.
No, I'm wondering, like, so what's the backstory behind the developers here? Did they set out to make a game that's sort of like, we want to educate people about how beekeeping works? Or do you get the sense that this is sort of like it comes from an authentic place?
I feel like, yes. I don't know that that's the case. I've not done the research to sort of see, like, are you guys a credible source for beekeeping information in this little video game that you've made? But the first few hours of the game do feel like it's very like bee information forward.
Okay.
It does unfortunately feel like a little bit more time was spent like getting the bee stuff right, and a little less time was spent on like creating like a structured narrative or engaging characters. It's it's a little heavy-handed in the beginning, and it's a little top heavy on bee stuff.
Okay.
You meet up with your grandmother on the island, and I'm so happy you're back, and I'm so happy that you're going to take up beekeeping and keep the family interest going. Here's a book your grandfather wrote about beekeeping. Use this to help you get started. And that's your tutorial essentially, but it's massive. If you click on the icon to open it up, there's all these headers, and all of the headers have some degree of like a function, like how to, chop down a tree, and how to take that tree and turn it into wood to build your first deck box with that you can have hives in. Where to build hives, and where to build hives in proximity to others, and to plants and to flowers, and how to plant the right flowers, and on and on and on. And I'm still like hours into this game, maybe 3 hours, 4 hours I've put into Apico, and I'm still working through the tutorial. I'm still working through my grandfather's book. And like, it's not other characters like giving me direction. I'm not building relationships in the game. It's really just me going through a checklist of things to do. And I have my little pixel character, and he roams around and he chops down trees with his axe. And first I spent 25 minutes trying to figure out how to get an axe and where to build one, how to build one. And then chopping down some trees. And then I had to build a saw table to rip down the trees into wood. And I could use 2x4s to build bigger structures, or I could cut them down into smaller sticks to build smaller structures, and like on and on and on. So it's a game that has a lot of like technical stuff going on. It has a lot of systems going on, but it probably could have used a little bit more love from the character and world building perspective, because I'm a little hungry for that stuff right now.
Well, you're not satisfied just building up your beehive empire or whatever?
I mean, it is kind of satisfying, but if you're going to call it like a cozy life sim about beekeeping, like give me some life sim stuff, right? Give me, I don't need another game where I run a farm and I have to like weed and put down plants in rows, and where do I get seeds and stuff like that. But if you're going to build a whole that thing around beekeeping, at least give me kind of other cool characters to talk to. The fact that there is now a researcher on the island who's doing research on butterflies is really interesting. And I keep going to that person like, do you have new dialogue options today? Talk to me and be my friend. I just wish there was a little bit more of that. Unfortunately, in the first handful of hours on the island, everybody is sort of stuck in the same like conversation loop. Anytime you talk to your grandmother, who I would think would have a ton of dialogue for me, she's like, "Oh, I'm so happy you're back on the island. Make sure you read your grandfather's book." And I'm like, "But Grandma, it's me. Don't you want to, reminisce or tell me stories?" But nope, she's just always standing outside of your house.
No,
like,
you're
ready to give you your
bees.
one line. Yeah.
You're going to talk to your grandma.
So it's a little light on the life sim stuff, and satisfyingly heavy and a little challenging.
Heavy on the beekeeping stuff.
On the bee stuff, yeah. I don't know if after I get outside of the bubble of this very long-winded tutorial, if it suddenly feels awesome and I'm having a great time, I'll report back, because I'm a little into it. I kind of want to see where it goes. Again, I'm super satisfied by the bee stuff. And I'm learning a bit. There is an element of conservation to it, and sort of appears to be sort of structured in kind of in defense of bees and their value. There's different kinds of bees that you can collect and grow different hive. I don't know if you grow a hive, assemble, breed, whatever the right word is, different hives for.
Let the bees figure it out. They'll take care of it. Yeah,
the birds and the bees do their thing. But
are birds in this also?
There are some birds, but it's not. Most of it is just like around, and you walk near them on the screen and they fly away.
Okay.
They're not like a part of the game. So yeah, it's interesting, but it's not any more than that at this point. It's not like an obsession. It didn't hook me in the way that I think Stardew Valley has hooked some people. Stardew Valley also didn't hook me in that way.
I was going to say, didn't have a great time with Stardew Valley either.
No, I've bounced off Stardew Valley twice now. I probably won't go back for a third.
That sounded like, there's tons of the life sim stuff in there.
In Stardew Valley.
Yeah, right? Isn't that the case?
I also felt that was a little vague. I think I wanted a little more direction. When I played Stardew Valley, I think I found a walkthrough, like things you should do in your first 10 hours of Stardew Valley. And I was like, here's what I need. And it felt like I had a little bit more structure. Unfortunately, Apico is very heavy on kind of initial structure. But I'm still hungry for, like, I want to stop by the bar and have a drink with some villagers and get to know people and find out what's going on the island. And there's just not a lot of that in Apico so far.
So I don't know. Sound like it was really their focus for this.
Yeah, it's a balance, and clearly, different developers have different objectives. But I mean, if Apico is built to just be an education tool, cool, that's fine. It's just a little bit dry when it comes to that. Interesting, but not the most engaging thing in the world. But if you're trying to create a video game that people kind of come back to and want to do like their dailies and check in on and like, oh, how are my hives doing today, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't necessarily feel like Apico is built that way from the jump. It does. I don't know. I think it struggles a little bit to get you to kind of come back to it daily. It hasn't done the work to earn the routine just yet. That I know that games like, Life Sim, Cozy, daily habit kind of games thrive on.
I wonder what the audience for this game was they're expecting to be. Whether it's like they wanted to introduce people to the whole beekeeping world, or I think it'd be fun if they made a game that was specifically for beekeepers. So, somebody really familiar with the just beekeeping things in general sits down to play this, and they're like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I would do, or how I manage my beehives or whatever.
Yeah.
Or inside baseball kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It also doesn't sound quite like I was thinking of that Mortician game that was very much about sort of educating people on what it's like, all the considerations there are to being a mortician. And the game felt like the actual stuff you would do as on the video game side of things felt secondary to that.
Yeah. Yes. And I think, that's a Mortician's Tale. And I like that game. That I think verged a little more towards being an actual, like a job sim. And that you were doing some of the kind of the more unpleasant aspects of death in that game.
But that was clearly put together by, it was like an actual mortician.
She was a mortician, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so definitely knew what she was talking about. And it made me think of also like that pizza game, where I just felt like anybody could have made this game. I don't think you need to have worked in a pizzeria to put together a game like this. And if they had, I think that's actually the case. They like were experienced with a pizzeria, but I didn't feel like I was getting, I didn't have any new insights into the pizza making process after playing that game. So it sounds like this, like Apico, maybe lands somewhere in the middle of those two.
I think you're probably right, because this, one of your early missions in Apico is go collect like one of 3 different types of bees. And you don't get into any of the like if you tell me this in the real world, like in my living room in Harrisburg, Randy, go outside and collect 3 bees. Mm-hmm. I have follow-up questions, right? Like, well, one, that sounds dangerous. How am I going to get, I'm not going to get stung, am I? Where do I keep the bees? How do I catch them? Is there a net involved? Like, Apico doesn't indulge any of that stuff. You see the little icon for a cute little pixel bee floating up, and you walk up and you push A.
Okay, it's not like you'll get a red, a blue, and a yellow one.
Well, it does kind of fall into that category eventually, because you have bees that sort of live in the woods. You have bees that live by the seashore. Oh. So there's different geography and stuff like that. There's other stuff, but yeah, you don't get into any of the nitty gritty. Like, at no point in any of this tutorial has anyone mentioned ever getting stung by a bee. And I'm like, well, that's one of the
come up at all. That's interesting.
The biggest considerations for me in thinking about like life with bees is like, well, how at what point do you get used to being stung all the time? Mm-hmm. And the game doesn't really address that, at least not thus far. Yeah, you really just kind of walk up and grab a bee, and it adds 1 bee to your inventory. And I'm like, well, where am I carrying all these bees? So yeah, it's a little light on some of those details, but it does tend to sort of go a little heavy on some of the other details on hive in colony structure and things like that. There you have to get all that stuff right. And you get a whole like sub menu dedicated to that. So it's, they're clearly picking and choosing the details they want to like focus on. And yeah, some of that does seem to be coming from a more educational standpoint, which is interesting. But again, I don't know if that's an entire video game.
Maybe to a professional beekeeper, getting stung is such just a minor concern they didn't even feel like it was worth putting into the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just like, no, it's been years since I've been stung by a bee, or like, don't even notice it anymore.
But like you would think there'd be like some addressing in the game of like the getup, right? Don't you have to have like the beekeeper's uniform and the little canister that has smoke coming out of it and stuff like that?
Oh, don't you? I mean, I just kind of assumed that you would have one of those uniforms.
Yeah, and the game thus far does not address any of that stuff.
Okay.
So I don't know. Maybe those things aren't important. Maybe it addresses it later. I'm not sure. But if your beekeeping game doesn't like get into like, that seems like a perfect opportunity for dress up to me. Like, oh, cool, I want the purple.
Oh, you get the upgraded beekeeper
yeah.
suit.
You can only work on hornets' nests if you have the upgraded beekeeper suit. And again, maybe this is not that video game, but there's just elements of the beekeeper hobby that just seem like they would be so perfectly tuned to video game. And this video game does not seem to take advantage of them. So yeah, it's a weird proposition. That said, though, I'm interested in it. I was interested before I even played it. I continue to be interested in this as a hobby. It's cool that somebody loves this enough to have made a video game structured around it. I'm just not 100% certain it's a great video game. I need to spend a little more time with it. I'm learning a bit, but I'm also sort of a little frustrated by the structure of the thing thus far. This is called Apico. I'm playing it on the Switch right now. It is coming out for just about everything this summer, so keep an eye out for it if this sounds interesting to you. But it's on the Switch now. I believe it's on Steam now as well. Yeah, if any of this sounds mildly interesting to you, check it out.
What you really need is for them to make Beekeeping Simulator 2024 or whatever, and they'll just have the full experience just simulated down to the smallest detail. Yeah,
the simulator games are kind of a big deal right now. That the power washing thing, man, is like 10 million copies or something stupid.
That's
like
what I was thinking of. I was like, what if all those dirty houses were just beehives?
Yeah. You had to put on the suit and get the little thing with the smoke and go.
Yeah. You have a whole bunch of different suit options you could check out.
So
probably your beekeeping arm attachments. I don't know what kind of tool a beekeeper uses. I imagine you could have attachments though.
A net and the smoke thing. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a deluxe net and various sizes of the smoke thing. I don't even know. like what is the smoke thing? I guess maybe I should play this and find out. Oh, no, but you said it's not in this, so...
At least not thus far, no, but might have to do some research. There's nothing that says that Apico has to be like the definitive beekeeping experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Like I have curiosity. I'm interested. I also want it to be a good and fun video game. And I think it's struggling to sort of find the balance between those two things.
Sounds like you're just beyond, having a casual interest in beekeeping. It's just not doing it for you. You need the hardcore beekeeping simulator.
Yeah. I need like the sting-free beekeeping simulator 2023.
Well, I mean, it's just a simulator. Fine if you get stung a couple times, probably.
No, it comes with a special controller that if you get stung in the game, it actually spikes your hand.
Ooh, well, that doesn't sound good.
No. I've never been stung by a bee. Maybe that's why I'm afraid of it.
No, neither have I. I'm hoping I'm not like deathly allergic to it, because that would be a bad thing to discover.
Yep. So this is what you get for spending your entire life inside the house.
Just, because of bees. Don't want to get stung.
Yep. Is that I watch documentaries on YouTube about people who watch birds, and I play video games about bees.
Yeah. No, I've never been stung or bitten by a bird either.
Nope.
That's good.
Nope. Never actually seen a bird in real life.
Nope. Just still wondering if they're real.
Only on television. Yeah.
It's like dinosaurs, basically.
I think there's a connection there. Yeah. Whether or not that was your point, but yeah. So yeah, those are all the video games we played this week. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, man, it's a lot, and none of
if
them
you need
were
any more
Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, it didn't really even get into that. Let's do another hour on Tears of the Kingdom. Oh, you didn't play it though.
No, and I don't have anything to add.
Shit.
I mean, probably still talk about the game for an hour, but
I could do it myself for an hour, I'm sure. You
do
can
that
leave.
next week. I'm going to take next week off. You can just do a monologue about Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm sure people would love that.
I would listen to it.
I'm going to do this outro now. If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you should follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. Hang out with us on Discord, chat about video games and other fun stuff. Come play Street Fighter 6 with GD Milkman, because he needs people to play with. We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, and anywhere else you can find a podcast. Literally anywhere else, really. And tell your friends about the show. Yeah,
really helps us get the word out, attract new listeners, brings in their awful Star Trek opinions so I can mute all of those people. Come to our Discord and share your Star Trek hot takes with DJ. Man, there were some awful Star Trek takes a few weeks back. I completely blanked that out of my memory. But, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Mm-hmm. Sure. We want to give thanks again to Fear of Dark for our intro and outro music this week. If you'd like to hear more of his work, you can go to fearofdark.bandcamp.com and check out some more of his albums there. That would be great. Awesome. We'll be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson. This is DJ Ross. Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye. Good night. See you.